It's 4:20. Let's go ahead and get started. First of all, thank you so much, for taking time to stop by the EDU session. I've already had an opportunity to talk to several of you over the conference, and hopefully you're enjoying and getting a lot, out of the conference, and certainly open to more conversations. With that, my name is LeRoy Jones II. I am a program director in the Division for Equity and Excellence in STEM. In the Directorate for STEM Education at the National Science Foundation. My particular programs that I'm responsible for is the Lewis Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation Program, as well as the Historically Black Colleges and Universities undergraduate program. So as we're going through this, of course, I'll be covering the entire EDU. So I do have kind of a cursory knowledge of the different programs, but if I can't answer the questions, I certainly know who to put you in contact with, and I'll be glad to do that. So starting off so that you can have my information, my email is ljones@nsf.gov. ljones@nsf.gov, just in case we don't get to your question, or if you think of something a little bit later and you want to reach out to me, I'll certainly make those connections for you, and then I'll hang around after the presentation to answer any questions that you may have as well. So as I said, work in the Director for STEM Education, and this kind of talks about our mission and our investments. And as you can see, there's really three underlying themes for EDU. So the first one is to enhance the preparation, increase the participation, ensure the contributions of individuals underrepresented and underserved in the STEM enterprise, but also to improve STEM learning and learning environments such that, all, and that's both institutions as well as students, are prepared to contribute to the STEM workforce. Now, in this next slide, I know that slide is a little bit busy, but I hope that you would appreciate the depth and the breadth, of the Director for STEM Education. We have a budget right over $1 billion, dollars. And I think that this here, you can see why, because we're certainly touching several different areas. So as you can see, we have the Division of Research and Learning in Formal and Informal Settings, which we refer to as DRL. We also have the Division of Graduate Education, which we refer to as DGE. Also the Division of Undergraduate Education, which we refer to as DUE. And also the Division of Equity for Excellence in STEM, which is EES. And a couple of years ago, that was HRD, Human Resources, HRD, Human Resources and Development, excuse me. Along the top, you can see that we have several programs that actually span, the Directorate, as well as, move out into the NSF. So we'll also be talking, a bit about that as well. So if you need more information, you can always go to the website there, nsf.gov.edu. And you'll also be able to see the other programs that we have within the division. All right, so what I want to do is just walk through, highlight some of the programs that we have in each division. And the first division that I want to start off with is the Division for Equity for Excellence in STEM. And as you can see, EES provides support to grow the innovative U.S. STEM workforce by supporting the inclusion and success of individuals currently underrepresented and underserved in STEM. And this also includes the institutions, where they're at. So in terms of actual programs, I wanted to start out with the Advance program. And what you'll see on every slide is the solicitation itself, as well as the deadlines, and then kind of a bullet point or two, and on some of the different tracks about what these programs are about. But as you can see here, Advance program addresses systematic gender-based equalities impacting STEM faculty with systemic change strategies. There are actually 4 funding tracks for this particular award, and it spans anywhere from $300,000 to $3 million, over 5 years. So just to give you an idea for individuals who may not have an AGAP award, you can start at the catalyst level with $300,000 over 2 years. You can then move from there to the what they call the partnership track, which is $1 million over 5 years, and then really to make what they call institutional transformation at your institutions. That particular opportunity or track affords $3 million over 5 years. One of the things that we want to stress about this particular award is that it is indeed institutional. So it doesn't provide fellowships or research or travel grants to individuals, postdoc researchers, or faculty. It is purely institutional. Another program that has been around for several years now is what we refer to as AGAP. That's the Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professorate. And with this particular program, as you can see, we're trying to increase the number of minority faculty, in STEM. And they do that, a number of ways. This particular track actually has 3 funding tracks. The first one is Institutional Transformation Alliances, which you can actually request up to $4 million. They also have the AGAP Career Pathway Alliance model, which you can request up to $2.9 million. And then they have also the Catalyst Alliance, if this is like your first time and you want to actually get into the program, at $400K. Once again, like the one that we just talked about, advanced, this is institutional, so it doesn't provide, support per se, to students that's in this program. Another program there in EES is what we refer to as CREST centers. And these are centers of research excellence in science and technology. These particular programs is really to develop the infrastructure, research infrastructure and to a certain extent the educational infrastructure at MSIs. Typically with this particular program, when you're looking at it, it has 3 funding mechanisms, a phase 1 and a phase 2 CREST, but it also have what they call CREST partnership supplements that support the establishment, of partnerships either with NSF centers or other partners, and that can even be K-12 entities. In terms of funding for this particular grant, for the CREST Center Phase 1, essentially a group of professors or researchers come together and they develop some centralized theme of research that they pursue. And for this particular award, a center award can be up to $1.5 million per year for $7.5 million during a 5-year period. Okay, that's the Phase 1. Once they reach toward the end of the award, they can apply for Phase 2 for another 5 years of funding at $7.5 million. So essentially for 10 years, you can apply for $15 million. In terms of the partnership award, it is $100,000 for that particular award. And also you may submit preliminary proposals for additional 5 years of support with the Phase 2, which I already discussed. Now, the EPSCoR Center is essentially the same as the CREST Center. The only difference is the focus is on EPSCoR institutions, faculty, and students. But virtually everything else, is the same for this particular award. And of course, in this case, you can certainly go to the LSM institution to identify if your institution is in a EPSCoR state, if you don't already know that information. One thing that I would like to say that I had here in my notes is that when we refer to EPSCoR jurisdictions which are eligible and also they must be emerging research institutions. So those are institutions with less than $50,000 in research expenditures per year as reported in 3 of the last 5 years. So if you do fall in that category, this will be one that you certainly should think about exploring. The next I would like to talk about is the CREST RISE program. And this program is really put in place to provide support to enhance the research capabilities of MSIs. As you can see, there's 3 different tracks, which, for the most part, are self-explanatory. The first one is what they call the DPSI, which really focus on the research doctoral programs. And for that particular track, you can apply for $2 million over 5 years. The second one is the research advancement and development, which is referred to as RAD, and that is 1 million over 5 years. And the focus of that particular track is to really build kind of institutional capacity, but also deal with the number of research doctoral students that's participating in these particular programs, and especially as it pertains to looking at individual researchers. And then the last one is the CREST, RISE equipment and instrumentation. That's really about building infrastructure, and you can receive up to $500,000 over 1 year for that particular program. The last CREST opportunity that I would like to talk about is the postdoctoral research program. So this particular program award provides 2 years of support for research experiences and training for early career scientists at active CREST centers. So that's the key. They must be at active CREST centers. When you're looking at this particular opportunity, the proposals must be submitted by the individual postdoctoral candidates. However, if the award is recommended, it'll be transferred to the host institution where the postdoctoral scholar will be named as the PI. So if you're a faculty member as well as an administrator, at an institution of higher education, you know the importance of that, as a postdoc, being able to be acknowledged as a PI. In terms of the funding, the maximum annual award amount is $85,000 per year. And that's for up to 2 years. And the way that is split out, it's $70,000 per year salary, and then a $15,000 per year allowance to deal with research needs and professional development. And as I said, that is over 2 years. The next program, which I know quite a bit about, is the HBCU Up program. As you can see, there are multiple deadlines, and there's also multiple tracks. The HBCU program supports the approaches to prepare HBCU undergraduates for STEM workforce, as well as STEM faculty research capacity and professional development. There's actually 5 different tracks for this particular funding opportunity. You have the Targeted Infusion project, which is $400,000 over 3 years, that really deals with curricular type design. You also have research on broadening participation in STEM projects, referred to BPR. It's $350,000 over 3 years, dealing with the research of broadening participation. Also, research initiation awards for faculty members who have just joined. We've just raised that from $400,000 to $450,000 over 3 years. You then have kind of the larger scale implementation projects that deals with, really changes the institutional level. And that's really in rounds. So you can have 1.25 million during the first round, 2.25 million over the second and third round, and then the fourth round and beyond is 3 million, and that's over 4 years. And then finally, something that's been around for the last 10 years is what we call the Broadening Participation Research Centers. And these are $9 million centers over 5 years. The thing that I want to stress with the BPRs is that they should focus on the research of broadening participation. Sometimes we get preliminary proposals, and as well as proposals that's dealing with broadening participation implementation, where you're trying to just broaden the field. But this is with broadening participation research. So we look for you to have social scientists, working on this particular project. The next project is the Lewis Stokes Alliances for Minority Participation. And as in its name, it's an alliance of institutions, 4 or more institutions. We've had anywhere from 4 to 30 institutions working together to figure out, creative and innovative ways to recruit, retain, persist, as well as graduate underrepresented minorities as defined in the solicitation. Once again, I won't go over all the tracks, but there's 7 funding tracks. We have planning grants if you want to kind of learn and build an organization, all the way up to the the individual alliances themselves, particularly the Bridge to the Baccalaureate that's dealing with 2-year alliances, then also what we call the STEM Pathway Alliances, which are typically 4-year alliances. And then finally, we have what we call networks, which allows collaboration of institutions up to 4 to come together and really explore emerging technologies and introduce the LSAM community, students and faculty, to those particular opportunities. Another program that you may be familiar with that is within EES is Includes. So of course, this project is one of the what we call 10 big ideals, at the NSF. And what I really want to bring to your mind, to your attention here, is that the program supports broadening participation efforts at scale through collaborative infrastructure. So these are huge grants, and I'll talk a little bit about the numbers, but it's essentially, how do we broaden participation? How do we, push the needle forward? And we know that, one institution or one individual cannot do that, but it really takes a network of individuals, not only locally, but also statewide, regionally, as well as nationally. And these are designed to really take care of that. So there's 5 type, projects, and as I said, from pilot projects, which are $600K over 2 years, all the way up to alliances, which are $10 million over five years. So these projects are really intended to move forward on broadening participation. The last one that I will cover in EES before moving on is the TCUP program, Tribal Colleges and Universities program, which of course, is focused on tribal colleges. This particular opportunity has 8 funding tracks, and is intended to support the creation of new degrees or disciplines at tribal colleges and universities, the enhancements of departments or programs, research grants for faculty, and capacity building. So it really covers the gamut of opportunities that's available for these tribal colleges. The next division that I would like to talk about is the Division of Research on Learning in Formal and Informal Settings, referred to as DRL. I guess what I want to stress here is that DRL provides funding for foundational and applied research to advance understanding of STEM learning and teaching. And this includes the design, implementation, and study of learning environments and the study of technologies intended to engage and enable STEM learning for all students. Now, with that being said, I'd like to start off by talking about what we call AZLE, Advancing Informal STEM Learning. So AZLE-funded projects should contribute to the research and practice, that illuminates informal STEM learning roles and equity and belonging in STEM. Also create and enhance the theoretical and empirical foundations for effective informal STEM learning, and/or enhance science communication to public's engagement in and understanding of discovery in STEM and STEM processes. There's actually 5 tracks that's funded by AZLE. It has the synthesis track, which is provides $500K over 3 years. It also has a conference track, which provides $250K over 2 years. Partnership development and planning, which offers $150K over 1.5 years, and then also getting into some of their bigger projects, integrating research and practice, which is $2 million over 5 years, and finally research and support of wide-reaching public engagement in STEM, which is $3.5 million over 5 years. The next program that I would like to cover there in this particular division is what we call DRK-12, which is Discovery Research Pre-K through 12. So this particular program seeks to significantly enhance the learning and teaching of STEM fields by pre-K through 12 students and teachers through research and development of STEM education, innovation, and approaches. One of the things that we want to point out is that these projects should result in research-informed and field-tested outcomes and products that inform teaching and learning. In terms of the funding range, they fund in levels. And of course, that's dictated by the scope of your particular project. So a level 1 project, we funded at a max of $450K. A level 2 can move to $3 million. And then finally, level 3 moves to $5 million. They also have what they call partnership development proposals, which are funded at $100,000, synthesis proposals at $600,000, and then you can also apply for workshop conference proposals, which they fund at $200,000. The next project that I would like to talk about is iTest. So you can see that we're really big into acronyms. And a lot of times when we're putting these together, we try to figure out the right wording and how to, figure that out. And sometimes that probably takes longer than actually writing the actual solicitation for the awards. But in any case, when you're dealing with iTest, it's really the Applied Research and Development Program with goals to advance the equitable and inclusive integration of technology and learning and teaching, STEM. So in this particular one, they actually have 6 different types, of funding. So if you went to that particular solicitation, you can certainly see what those are. But in terms of a range of funding, anywhere from $100,000 for conferences, all the way up to $3.5 million for their scaling, expanding, and integrating innovations. So once again, it really depends on the scale that you're trying to do for these projects. Whether you are just dealing with teachers, at the school, or if you're kind of moving into the K-12 itself, or if you're dealing with districts, that the level of funding scales accordingly. All right, so we've covered 2. We have 2 more to go, and then we're going to open up the floor for questions. So really appreciate your patience. The next division that I would like to talk about is DUE, the Division of Undergraduate Education, which supports the design, development, and study of innovative STEM learning environments to improve learning for all undergraduates. And as you can see from their mission, they have a couple of themes by which they do this. So providing leadership, as well as providing support for curriculum development, preparing the workforce, as well as fostering connections between faculty and students, as well as institutions. So there are a couple of programs that I would like to highlight. The first one is the ATE program that focuses on the education of technicians at 2-year community and technical colleges. So I'm just curious, how many 2-year institutions do we have here in the audience? Okay, great. And I'm pretty sure that we have several online as well. In the last couple of years, the NSF has really ramped up its attention to 2-year institutions, because we do appreciate what those institutions bring to the educational landscape in terms of its preparation for students who then either move into the STEM workforce, or those students transfer into 4-year institutions and then move on from there. So this particular program, as I said, it focuses on the education technicians at 2-year community and technical colleges. It actually has, 6 different tracks. So small projects for institutions, new to AT, $350,000 over 3 years. You have the projects themselves, at $650 over 3 years. They also have consortiums where you pull together multiple institutions, and that's $3 million over 4 years. They have the huge centers, which are actually $7.5 million over 5 years, and even resource centers, and then also applied research and technician training, which is $800,000 for up to 4 years. This program also supports conferences and meetings up to $250,000 a year. And if you don't know much about the program and you want to learn about it, they also have planning grants for $70,000. So as you can see, a really push, to provide opportunities for the two-year institutions. The next program that I would like to talk about is iYouth. This is a program that, once again, it spans across divisions. certainly there in the Directorate for Education, but IU's EDU supports projects to improve STEM teaching and learning from undergraduate students, including studying what works and for whom and how to transfer institutions to adopt successful practices in STEM education. There's 2 tracks for this particular program. The first one is engaged student learning, which they fund at level 1 at $400K and at level 2 at $750K, over 3 years. They also have a level 3, which offers $2 million over 5 years. And then they have the institutional and community transformations. And then once again, the level 1 is $200,000 for a single institution proposal and $400,000 for a multi-institution proposal. This particular opportunity also supports conferences, as well. This particular IUS is geared at, once again, two-year colleges. So in terms of its focus, it remains the same. The only difference is that the NSF particularly encourages submissions to the disciplines of national priority, such as quantum information science, artificial intelligence, robotics, process engineering, and then also cyber security. What's nice about this, it has some nice incentives. And what I mean by that, there are 2 tracks for this particular opportunity. The first one is a focus on academic experiences of 2-year college students, which is $500,000 over 3 years. However, the incentive is if you have not had NSF awarding over the last 5 years, they actually offer an additional $100,000 for this award, and that's over 4 years. And the same thing remains true for the second track, which is leveraging institutional strengths and innovation. So something for the 2-year institutions to really take note of. The next program that I would like to talk about is the NSF scholarships in STEM. This particular program supports institutions of higher education to fund scholarships for academically talented low-income students and to study and implement a program of activities that support the recruitment, retention, and graduation in STEM. There's 3 different tracks at different levels that deals with institutional capacity, as well as implementation in single institutions, and then also a larger one that deals with interinstitutional consortiums. With this one here, it also has a collaborative planning project that you can apply to, and they will fund $100,000 for you to explore and pull one of these together. This is actually hot off the press. So I believe that this solicitation actually came out 2 or 3 weeks ago. And this is really to recognize the teaching profession and the diverse cadre of outstanding STEM educators and advance equity in pre-K through 12. About 2 weeks ago, I was flying back to DC, and I was on the plane with 120 middle schoolers going to DC for their 8th grade trip. And when I got off that plane, my head was throbbing. And I can remember the teachers, apologizing profusely. I said, well, not a problem. But I said, thank you, for what you do. So this particular project here is one of those that actually, thank the teachers for what they do. So essentially, it's regional based. They select a group of teachers. They pay them a stipend. Offer professional development, to these particular teachers, as well as allow them to mentor, other teachers. So please, take a look at this, especially if you work with K-12 teachers. The next one that I would like to talk about is the what we call the NOICE scholarship program. Of course, with this program, it recruits and prepares STEM undergraduates and professionals for teaching careers. There's 4 tracks from scholarship and stipends to teaching fellowships, also master teaching fellowships, as well as people that want to conduct NOICE research. In addition, Capacity building proposals are accepted up to 100K. The last division that I want to talk about is a division of graduate education. And of course, with this particular division, it enables an inspiring, inclusive, equitable, and globally competitive U.S. STEM workforce by supporting students, research, scholarships, and innovation in the graduate education space. Several opportunities here that we want to raise to your awareness. The first one is the Cyber Corps program, Scholarships for Service, and it supports scholarships in cybersecurity that requires a service obligation following graduation equivalent to the length of the scholarship. However, it's pretty generous, So for an undergraduate student, they can receive $27,000 a year. And for graduate students, $37,000 per year, and that's just their stipend. In addition to that, it covers tuition and fees, as well as it provides a professional allowance up to $6,000 per academic year, and then also provides funding for them to go to conferences and travel. Of course, the catch at the end, you have to repay to Uncle Sam, some of your time, but certainly, an excellent opportunity for students to engage in. One other thing that I want to bring up about this particular opportunity, that it also provides additional funds up to $12,000 per student per year, may be requested for activities and other direct cost categories such as salary, travel, material, supplies, and et cetera. The next one, let's talk about secure and trustworthy cyberspace. Once again, with this one here, it supports research addressing cybersecurity and privacy, and it really draws from a couple of areas: computing, communication, information sciences, engineering, economics, education, mathematics, statistics, and the social and behavioral sciences. This one is really focused on just learning more about cybersecurity and privacy education and training. And for this particular award, you can receive up to $400,000 up to 3 years. But if you collaborate with a cybersecurity expert, you can receive an additional $100,000. I think that most of us are aware of this particular award here, the Graduate Research Fellowship Program. It's probably one of the oldest programs, at the National Science Foundation, but it supports outstanding graduate students, as they prepare, to serve our nation. You can see they receive a current annual stipend of $37,000 plus a $16,000 cost of education allowance, which goes to the institution. The nice aspect of this particular award is that it provides 3 years of support over 5 years of the fellowship period and is portable. So what I mean by that, one of the things with the LSM program that I run, we provide 2 years of graduate support, after a student graduates. So essentially, if a student receives this award, they can defer it for years 3, 4, and 5. Or maybe they have funding for 1 year, they can defer for 2, 3, and 4. So it's really, a nice piece for this particular program. It really gives the students a lot of flexibility. Another program that I like to talk about, just real quickly here, is Innovations in Graduate Education, and it supports potentially transformative approaches to graduate education with a focus on preparing students in research-based master's and doctoral degree programs, of course, in STEM. It has 2 tracks, and then one of the sister programs that we also have is what we call the NRT, NSF Research Traineeship Program. And for this particular program, it's all about conversion research. So researchers from multiple disciplines work together to solve problems that are beyond the scope of individual scientific areas. In regards to this particular track, it has a track 1 and a track 2. In the track 1 is $3 million up to 5 years. But the track 2 is $2 million up to 5 years, but that is limited to non-R1 institutions. All right, so that's the difference, between the tracks. So a couple of more that I want to cover real quick. How are we doing on time, Jeremy, pretty good, okay. So just have a couple of more that I want to cover, and then we'll open up the floor for your questions. These are programs that cut across the Directorate as well as the NSF. The first program that we would like to highlight is what we call Computer Science for All. And this supports partnerships and research that help equip high school teachers to teach computer science, K-8 teachers to incorporate computer science and computational thinking in their classes, and then also funding for school districts to create computing pathways across all grades. Once again, they have small, medium, and large research practice partnerships that range from $300,000 over 2 years all the way up to $2 million for up to 4 years. And of course, that depends on the scale at which that you are working. They also have a research strand proposal, which has a maximum of $750,000 for up to 3 years, plus funds for embedded research experiences for undergraduate supplements. So a very diverse, program, and certainly needed in our nation. Another program that kind of cross across the Directorate is what we call ECR. This is the EDU Core Research Program, and the Core Research Program invites proposals for fundamental research that advances the knowledge in one or more of the 3 research tracks, and that is research on STEM learning and learning environments. The second one is research on broadening participation in STEM fields, and then also the third one is research on STEM workforce development. In terms of the funding, it's actually in 3 different levels, and once again, that depends on the scope of your project. So for the level 1, you can actually request up to $500K. For level 2, $1.5 million, and then for proposals, may request up to $2.5 million, for level 3. Now, this is also kind of a build on, building capacity in STEM education research of the ECR, but it's designed to support activities that will advance STEM education and research, including professional development for researchers, institutional training on use of cutting-edge research techniques and conferences. And once again, with this particular program, it has 2 funding tracks. It has the individual in investigator development in STEM education research, which provides $350K over 3 years, and then the Institutes for Methods and Practices in STEM Education Research, which provides actually $1 million for over three years. This particular program also provide conference grants from anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000. I won't spend a lot of time, on this particular program here because it's going to be actually covered tomorrow. So you can certainly go and get all of the information for this program. But the program supports early career faculty who have the potential to serve as academic role models in research and education, and to lead advances in the mission, of their department or organization. In terms of funding within EDU, the career award, including direct costs, is expected to total a minimum of $400,000. Typically, we say up to, but this is one of the ones where it actually has a minimum, of funding for EDU. And then if you move outside of EDU, it can go as high as a minimum of $500,000 over 5 years. So if we have any newly minted faculty, I would certainly encourage you to consider this particular award. This is another one. We talked about this a little bit earlier, the IUSE program, but this is specifically for HSI type institutions, and they have multiple grants in which you can apply, and it's all about capacity building at HSIs. So they have planning or pilot project awards, $200,000 for single institutions, $300,000 for collaborative institutions, and one of the incentives is that if you work with a community college partner or partners, they'll provide an additional $100,000. The same holds true for a second track that they have, implementation and evaluation project awards, $500K for single institutions, $800K for collaboratives, and then once again, in this case, if you're working with a community college partner or partners, they provide a $200,000 incentive on top of that. And then finally, if you're looking to make institutional transformation, they have the Institutional Transformation Project, and it awards up to $3 million over 4 years. All right, so just four more we need to talk about. First, I know that I've talked with a couple of people about this particular opportunity, which is racial equity in STEM education. We call it racial equity, and it supports bold, groundbreaking, and potentially transformative projects addressing systemic racism and promoting racial equity in STEM education. What I would like to really highlight for this particular project that's not seen on your screen there is just the budget information. It cannot exceed a maximum of $5 million, nor a project duration of over 5 years. So you just want to make sure that whatever you propose in terms of your budget, that it reflects the scope, of your project that you're working on. The next that I'd like to talk about is the STEM Education Postdoctoral Research Fellowship Award. This particular award supports professional development activities for postdoctoral fellows to position them for their careers in STEM education. The annual amount for this particular fellowship is $85,000. And this is per year, over 2 years. It provides $70,000 per year in terms of the salary, and then up to $15,000 per year to cover research-related expenses and professional development type goals. Another program which is very, very similar. However, this is cohort-based. So the first one that I showed you was individual, and this is cohort-based to bring 2 to 4 postdocs to your institution. And then in terms of the funding amount, it is essentially the same. The last program that I would like to talk to you about is the Workplace Equity for Persons with Disabilities in STEM education. This is also a new solicitation. It's been released within the last 6 or 7 months. For this particular project, it supports fundamental, applied, and translational research that advances knowledge and practice about diverse, equitable, inclusive, as well as accessible STEM and STEM education workplaces and post-secondary training environments for persons with disabilities. They have several different type of proposal types. Research proposals, which you can request $1.5 million for up to 5 years. Also synthesis projects, $600,000 for 3 years, conference proposals. And then you can also, through this program, actually apply to some of the PAPG, EAGER Awards, Rapid Awards, as well as the Facilitation Award and Scientists in Engineering and Disabilities. So certainly something to look at, if you're working in this particular space. All right, so the last thing I just wanted to highlight, and I'm pretty sure that you have seen this document over and over and over and over again over the last couple of days, and you will continue to see this particular document, but it really guides both the submission of proposals and the management of awards. So it's really the Bible, to a certain extent, when it comes to the proposals that's offered and awards that's offered at the NSF, and quite a bit of information. Been with the NSF 5 years, and I have not gotten through it all in terms of sitting down, reading this document. Really don't have the time to do so, but it's certainly an excellent, reference guide. All right, so interested in finding out more, so certainly you can take a look, at NSF by the numbers to see what we do in the different directorates in terms of awards and our offering. And then one of the things that is really largely underutilized, if you're looking to actually apply, to one of these opportunities, do the award abstract search, so you can see what has been done and what has been funded. All right, so many thanks for sitting there and not falling asleep on me. You guys did very well for 4:20 in the afternoon, and I'm open to any questions that you might have at this time. Thank you.
Hello. You could have done 3 sessions and still you had more material here. So thanks. One question on SETC, and you mentioned that if you have a cybersecurity expert, you can have up to 100,000 more. What is the definition of cybersecurity expert, and is there a list you have at NSF?
It's not a list that we have at the NSF. The PI would have to qualify what that is. That can be a researcher or a practitioner, and a lot of that can be distilled, will be distilled by the panel from the CV, that we receive. But there will be a part, in the actual proposal when you're talking about the proposal management team. Will give you the opportunity to really talk about the expertise and the skills of that particular individual.
Okay, so the PI could not be considered a cybersecurity expert. Is that what I guess?
When you're trying to get that particular $100,000 more, that's really someone external to the project that you're collaborating with.
Okay.
So the PI, of course, if they're working in that area, they would be an expert in that field. But what they're really trying to promote is the collaboration, in the project.
Okay, I understand. And for the career grant, I know there is a session tomorrow, but with respect to EDU, is the career funding available? All the money goes directly through the institution, only to the PI, or can they have collaboration? That was the question. If it's outside of EDU, more general, then I can ask tomorrow.
Yeah, you may want to ask tomorrow. My understanding with a career, that it's no co-PIs for that particular award. Now, you can have collaborators, but I'm not sure about subawards in that type. Yeah, so I would refer you to the actual solicitation, or better yet, in the session tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're so welcome. Thank you for your question.
Can I ask a question from the online audience? Okay, so person writes in that they are working at an institution in a state where the state legislature has recently passed laws specifically forbidding efforts that are only available to certain groups, such as women, underrepresented people in STEM, historically underrepresented in STEM. Are you aware of these challenges, and do you have any advice?
Very much aware of those challenges, and we've received several, calls over the last couple of months. The only thing that I can state is that with the NSF, it's business as usual. A lot of our programs are congressionally mandated, so unless they change those congressional mandates, we're still moving forward. Of course, you have to be sensitive, to what's going on in your states or what's going on in your regions. But one thing that I do know is that we have very creative people in the audience, and there's different ways of approaching that and dealing with that particular problem. So I'll just leave it. I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm wondering, how do you define what counts as STEM?
So STEM would be science, technology, engineering, mathematics, social, behavioral, and economics science. We cover all of that. Could you be a little bit more specific?
Well, I work in the College of Design, so we have industrial design, architecture. The architecture program has a STEM SIP code so that their international students can stay around longer. So I think there's a gray area there. I would love to apply to this program, but I don't know if it's going to immediately get thrown in the trash if it has architecture and design and people don't count that as STEM.
Right. What I would suggest that you do, if you identify a program that you're interested in, reach out and talk to that particular program officer.
Okay.
They would be able to better answer that question. It really differs from directorate to directorate, division to division, even from program to program.
Okay.
So that would be my advice to you.
Okay, thank you.
But I would like to say everything is STEM. Might be a little biased there.
Hi, it's my understanding that NRT is now the new, I don't know if I'm saying that right, IGERT, the acronym that was before. I don't know what it stands for, but it's the same principle as NRT.
I'm not familiar with the IGERT program. I've heard of the IGERT, so I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Yeah, my question would be what is different between both of them, but I guess, who can I ask that to? Just NRT officers?
Yeah, to an NRT officer, or the other thing that you can do is just shoot me an email.
Okay.
And then I'll connect you, with an officer over there and do a little bit more investigation.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I am particularly interested in the research on formal and informal spaces, but I would take a general answer if you have that instead. Would you recommend that an application focuses very narrowly on a specific program or tries to focus more broadly on systemic issues?
It's really up to you.
Okay.
And what I would suggest is that you put together a one-pager and send it to a project officer and have a conversation, with them. I've seen them where, programs, even to the programs that I run, that they can be very narrow, but you have others, that can be, quite wide and quite broad. So it really depends on, what you're trying to do and what you're trying to address.
Right. Thank you.
So I don't think, you'll be less competitive, more competitive.
Okay.
Either way. It really depends on the intellectual merit of the idea.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a question online about the IU's program, asking if IU supports informal learning. In other words, a teaching project that is not necessarily integrated in formal curricula.
That's a good question, and I would really have to suggest that they reach out to the program officer for the IU's, program. So reach out to the program officer for their program.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. So I am, my little disclaimer is that this is not meant to be a critique. It's meant to be a learning opportunity.
Okay, great.
So my question is, given the wealth of amazing pedagogy and teaching strategies and admissions, recruitment, retention, all of these different individual projects that NSF is funding, how much are you guys actually synthesizing across the projects to say best practices for recruitment and retention and active learning and curricular development? Where are those resources that result from the individual projects that you guys are funding? I'm familiar with Revise. I know that center is trying to do some of that in the informal and formal learning space, but I'm not sure what that looks like more broadly and across other directorates.
That's an excellent question. So we really look at that in two ways. For most of our projects, we require an external evaluation. You wouldn't necessarily see that. That comes in the annual, reports. And then we just report it out when we're giving presentations at conferences and places like that. But the other place would be that our programs require an evaluation, an extensive evaluation, every 5 years or so. So, for example, the LSM program is being evaluated by an external evaluator, and they will synthesize and pull out a lot of those things and report it back to us. And once again, we typically release that in an executive summary, to our community. But that's really the two primary ways, in which that occurs. Did I answer your question? You're looking at me like, you didn't quite get it there.
I'll do some digging. I'll try to find these reports that you're talking about.
Okay, great. And then reach out to me via email, and then we can have a further conversation. I needed to step away from this edge here before I go over. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question about the graduate research fellowship.
Yes.
I've been sort of blessed with a student who just received it this year.
Cool.
Her undergraduate degree is in art, and she's pursuing an art graduate degree, which is probably unusual for a research fellowship. The question that I have is, because I'm in the art college at Drexel, they have no experience of how to handle the NSF graduate fellows. In particular, my recollection from when I was a grad student, the CNU provided funding for research specifically for the graduate fellows. But looking at the description of the GRF, it wasn't clear how or if there are any guidelines for that 16K that's provided to the university, which I would want to kind of split it for her use for conferences and other aspects of it,
Right.
and partly for tuition and other fees. But there wasn't any guidelines provided in the GRFP website. So I was wondering if you have some suggestions of best practices or...
Yeah, the only thing that I can suggest is that you reach out to one of the POs. I do know with the GRFP program, they have a very robust website. And I'm surprised that you can't find that information there. But if you reach out to them, and I know they have kind of this generic email, if they don't respond to you, give me a buzz at the NSF or either email me. And then what I'll do is I'll try to connect you to one of the POs. Okay. Thank you for your question.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The question that I had is that if it is possible for postdocs to be listed as co-PIs in the EDU projects?
Good question. I don't think that is an NSF type requirement. I think that's more up to your institution. That's what we've heard of that. Some institutions do not allow PIs, to be postdocs. But to my knowledge, with the NSF, that's not something that we say no to. Yeah. So it really depends on your institution. Yeah.
In the ECR program, you mentioned about workforce development. Can you give an example of the types of award that may have been made in that program for the workforce development? If you can recall one.
Boy, workforce development. Now, you do know that I've covered 45 slides.
Yes, I already mentioned this could have been 3 sessions. So
what I would suggest, what I would suggest that you would do is just do an abstract search, so ECR with workforce development, and anything that's out there, you should be able to pull up.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right, we still have 4 minutes left.
I was wondering, so we participated in a MinTech Mentor Connect ATE proposal preparation.
Okay, cool.
Mentoring program, and it was great, and I was wondering if you have any type of proposal mentoring processes for other solicitations in this area.
Very good question. So, one of the things that you'll know for a lot of the programs that we talked about, they do have kind of that planning, aspect of it. I know for the programs that I oversee, a lot of times people have an interest, in those type of areas. They can actually reach out to the POs, and the POs can then put you in contact, with other individuals, that have similar interests. So it really kind of goes back to, contacting that PO and having that conversation, with him or her.
Great, thank you.
You're so welcome.
One last question over here about the ATE solicitation. The current deadlines, or the last deadline was for October of last year. Do you know if there is a new solicitation that is in the works for the current year?
That's a good question.
It's a NSF 20. It's a 21. It's a few years old, so I'm assuming that it may be in the works in terms of updating that solicitation.
Yeah, probably so. Let me get a look here real quick. Yeah, so I know with these particular solicitations, so that's a 2021, every 3 years or so, we update the solicitation. So in this particular one, it just has the first Thursday in October. When I went to the page, it didn't speak to another solicitation forthcoming. So that's something that I would have to need to check back with the program itself. Yeah, so if that individual you're streaming, just shoot me an email at ljones@nsf.gov, and I can check into that for you. Yep.
Hi. If we have a proposal or an idea for a proposal that we think is wonderful, and we do the award search and find out that it's already been proposed, maybe, at what points is it okay to go ahead and submit it? Are there things that maybe because it's in this region as opposed to that region, under what circumstances should we go ahead and submit? And as you're answering that, please think about, there were several categories that I thought, okay, it's eligible for this one. How many, should we just apply to one, or should we apply to several if we think it's eligible?
Right, so you're really speaking to, at the NSF, we say innovation. So innovation at one institution might not be innovation at another institution. So, what I would suggest that you do is send that one pager to the program officer, have that conversation, with that program officer, and make the case, why, this will impact, your institution. Because that's more on the implementation side. Speaking to your second question, you don't want 10 proposals of the same ideal coming to different programs at the NSF. So you want to try to figure out the best fit for it, and then, send it to that particular program. Now, the nice thing about that is that the POs talk among themselves. So let's say that it stretches into another area. I've received phone calls from other POs that said, hey, LeRoy, I have a program from an HBCU, or have a program from an NSI, and it really aligns with what you guys are trying to do. Are you open to co-funding this project? And that's where, that start. Or when you talk with that PO, they'll be able to better direct you, where is the right fit. So instead of just kind of throwing things, at the board, you really want to try to determine where that right fit is in the NSF, for your particular project.
Great. And is there anyone that can help in terms of trying to decide which one is the best one? I think it's great that you speak amongst yourselves, but in terms of trying to determine which one of these is the best to submit to, is there anyone that can help guide us?
Very good question. It really depends on your ideal. So, I would approach it from big to small. So we have 8 directorates or so, throughout the NSF. You're obviously here at EDU. We have 4 different divisions. You can look at the mission of each one. And then once you get inside of that, we have several different programs. Probably the person to actually speak to that is in leadership would be what we call the Triple D, the Deputy Division Director. If you would send it to that individual, they're most familiar with the programs across their division, and then they will get it to the correct project officer.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I do believe we're out of time for today, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you.